So you've moved away from home, you're out living in halls or in a house of your own, and the student loan company just put a massive sum of money into your bank account. Stewardship is a very important topic, and we want to talk about it today. I heard a story on a podcast, and I can't for the life of me remember what podcast it was on, but it was Craig Rochelle, who's the pastor of Life Church, and I'm sure most of you on your mobile device have the YouVersion Bible app. It's been downloaded I don't know how many million times across the world. It's like if you search Bible in any app store, it'll be the first one to come up. And in that podcast he was talking about he had tried his best to get the church that he was in charge of to a place where they had money so that they could take opportunities. A YouVersion is the fruit of that, or one of the fruits that have come from his idea of stewardship, and how if you steward things well, then you will be able to take opportunities that mean something. And I think that's just such a brilliant idea. And I would love to do more of that in my life, to be better stewards. And I think it's a biblical thing that we need to think about. But first of all, I want to share just kind of, an extra wee nugget of wisdom. Again, I picked this one up from a podcast recently, and I heard somebody preaching on it as well, and so it's kind of getting stuck into my head. And it's this: the world tells us that experience is the best teacher. You have to learn things the hard way. But that's worldly thinking, because I think God gave us the Bible for the very reason, so that we wouldn't have to learn things the hard way, so that we could learn to trust Him as a good Father, and so that we could take on His advice and learn to live by His principles, and therefore we wouldn't have to suffer by doing things the hard way, by finding it out by our own experience. And if we can learn things from other people's mistakes and take that on board, then that's wisdom. If we could learn from their mistakes so that we don't have to face it ourselves. So, when I was thinking about preparing this, there was a picture came up, the way like Google saves your photos and backs them up and different things. And I came across this photo from years ago, and I want to put it on the screen because I want you to learn from my mistakes. Okay, here we go. This car was my pride and joy. This is the first car that I owned myself. No, I tell a lie. It was the second car that I owned myself. The first one had an unfortunate ending, shall we say. This was my pride and joy when I was leaving school and about to go on to further education. And I done 1 year of a degree course before I ended up going to Bible college. And in that 1 year, I got myself a student loan. And I had this car, and I could not wait for the student loan to come in, because as soon as I got my first installment, you see those lovely alloy wheels, and you see how low the car is sitting to the ground. That's because it's on coilovers. Some of you will probably understand that. And I spent pretty much my first installment the day that it came in to my bank account. I had those things sitting on a shopping cart online, and as soon as the money was in my account, I came home and hit buy. And they came a few days later, and then I spent the rest of like that whole term with no more money, because I spent it all on the old car. Do you know what? They were only in it for a short time before I ended up ticking the whole thing off and flogged it for a lot less than I paid for them. That was not good stewardship of my student loan. And so I want you to learn from my experience, and I am trying my best to learn from my experience as well. We need to be good stewards. Here's a few things I want you to think about from the Bible as we think about stewardship. Stewardship can apply to so many areas of our life. In fact, every area of our life. But as we think about our finances and our money. Here's the first thing. God is the creator of it all. Therefore, He owns it. You might think, oh, that's my money, or that's mine, and this is mine, and that's mine. But the reality is, it's only lent to you because God is the creator and the owner of it all. Of it all. And so it's only given to us by His gracious hand. And we need to get that right at the very start, because we need to just take ourselves down a little bit and think here, I need to pay attention, because it's not mine to waste. It's God's in the first place. The second thing about stewardship is this is not some newfound idea. This is right at the very start. If you go right to the very beginning of Genesis and you start to read about how God made the heavens and the earth, and then he made man, and he made this guy who was called Adam, and he put him in the garden to look after the garden, to steward it. God said, here's this lovely garden. He said, here's all these animals, they need names. Adam, go you and name the animals. Go you and look after this garden. Go you and take charge of it and look after it for me. This isn't a new idea. And God's given you an opportunity maybe to get to university that other people would love to have had. He has maybe given you some money into your bank account and you don't want to waste it. He's saying to you, go and use that wisely. It's not a new idea. Jesus, along the same lines, in Matthew chapter 25, if you want a New Testament reference for this idea, there's a parable told there of these boys who got talents, who got money from their master. One guy got 5, another guy got 2, and another guy got 1. 3 guys who got money from their master. And it says the master came back looking to settle the accounts. He wanted to know, what have you done with what I have given you? What have you done with what I have given you? And so the guy who had the 5, he had 5 more, and he was a good and faithful servant. The guy who had 2, he had 2 more, and he was a good and faithful servant. The guy who had 1 squandered it. He buried it. He didn't do anything with it. He was like, oh, I was afraid. He didn't make good use of it. And it was actually taken from him, and he was cast out. He was cast out. You see, this is a biblical idea. And I want you to think about what you're doing with your money. You need to steward it so that you're able to take the opportunities in the future. And that might be as simple as in December that you could stick on the heat for a wee while. It might be as simple as in December, before you get the next installment coming next term, that you're able to eat. You need to plan so that you can take the opportunities. So as always, I love to give a few little practical tips and tricks, little things that you can maybe put into practice today after you've been watching this video. And here's the first thing. Number 1, tithing. Now that's an awkward topic and we could get down all sorts of rabbit holes about it, but we're back to this idea that it was God's in the first place and we need to give something back to God. And so I want to encourage you, whether you're like living just like a broke student, go and give something back to God first. Give something to God, to God's work, and honor God in that way. Give something back to Him. Point number 2 is get a budget going. Get yourself onto Google Sheets and get all of your expenses listed out. Write everything down into that spreadsheet and then see how much it's going to cost you to live every week or every month or whatever the case might be, and see how much that you have and start to divide it up and get yourself a budget. Get yourself a budget so that you're not overspending in September and October and broke for the rest of the year. Don't go on a massive big shopping spree like I did just when you get your money in. But start to budget and honestly get a spreadsheet, do it all out. If you're like me, you'll love to colour code it and all that sort of thing, and see how much it's going to cost you to live and budget that out so that you don't run out of money at the end of the term. Tip number 3, try and save something. Now this might sound crazy talking to broke students about trying to save money, but try and save something. See if you were to save £2 a week from now for a year. That's like the price of a coffee. It's not even the price of a coffee. If you were to save £2 every week from now until this time next year, you would have yourself £104. That's not to be laughed at. £104. I would quite like to have an extra 100 quid to spare this time next year. So try and save something. Point number 4, get yourself a second account. This is a little life hack, I suppose you could call it, that I picked up from somebody a few years ago, and I got myself a second account, and it really helped me to get things into order. I was able to budget out, using my spreadsheet, how much everything was going to cost me to live in a month. And then I left that amount of money into an account, and then I got a second account that I put my sweetie money into. And I give myself so many pounds every week or every month that I could spend on going to the cinema, on getting a Chinese, on just going out for coffee and whatever I fancied doing. That I had this small pot of money in its own account that I was able to use for socialising and for everything else. And I was able to use that confident that I had enough money set aside in the other account to cover all of the bills that needed to be covered. And it really, really helped me sort of get a grasp on what money was mine, what money was needed to be spent somewhere else, and then you were saving maybe a wee bit into another account as well. And you just had one card and you're like, this is the money that I'm using to go out with my friends and everything else that I'm doing. And then when you start to see it going down, then you know I need to back up a wee bit because I'm going to run out. Second account was a massive help to me a few years ago, and I encourage you to go and do the same yourself. And the last wee thing that I just want to share with you is be generous. Don't be known as that person who's so stingy, who's just counting every single penny and just won't help anybody else out. Be generous. You know, you don't have to be all flash and extravagant to be generous. Sometimes I think we get them confused. So, you don't have to go about flashing the cash and just being silly to be generous. To be generous can be really simple. It's to if somebody's round at your house, you offer them a cup of tea or coffee. Say, do you want to stay for dinner and put on an extra boil in the bag rice? It doesn't have to cost you a fortune to be generous. Don't be the person who's sitting squabbling over, I paid an extra 25p for our stuff last week, and trying to count out every penny, because what goes around comes around. And if we can get together and work together, if you pay a little bit extra this week, somebody else will pick that up next week. And you know what? It seems to level out pretty well. Be generous. Do your best to just be generous and to be known as someone who's generous. Thank you so much to tuning into our Uni 101 series. And if you have made it this far, we thank you so much for sticking about to the end. If we can help you, if you have any advice that you think would be helpful to other people, why not stick it in the comments down below? We'd love to get a conversation going down there. And share this with other people who might need it as well. And I hope these few thoughts on stewardship and in particular on money might help you to get a grasp on things so that you can take the opportunities that would come your way and so that you can bring glory to God as you steward your finances well. Thank you so much, and we will see you again soon.